Hey guys, Constance here from Cosmopolitan Cornbread. So I decided to sit down here today and do a little show and tell of sorts. And of course, as soon as I set everything up on the table, Hickory has to come and help. So many of you probably saw back in October when my aunt and uncle came for a short visit. Every October they go on a trip to Florida. They usually stop just for a short visit to say hello, shoot the breeze, catch up for an hour or two, and then they get back on the road. But this year was a little bit special. A few weeks prior to them going on their usual trip, my uncle had contacted me about some things that he had at their house that had belonged to my grandmother. And they are getting ready to downsize and all that stuff and wanted to find homes for some very special things. And so you may remember them coming and bringing my grandmother's organ and a few other things that I absolutely treasure. Well, one of the things that they brought was a box full of my grandmother's cookbooks, and it was such an emotional thing because, you know, the part of your brain that processes smells, it's in very close proximity to the part of your brain that is tied to memory and emotional memory. That's why you can smell something and it just instantly puts you in a place and a time and an experience that you had. Sometimes that can be good, sometimes it can be bad. But, you know, when I opened up some of these cookbooks and I smelled my grandma's house, it was definitely a good emotional memory connection. So I just wanted to go through and share with you my grandmother's cookbook collection, as well as another surprise cookbook that I got for Christmas this year, but I will save that to the end. So first of all, my grandma was known in the family as a very good cook. So she had all sorts of cookbooks in her collection, and I think there were even cookbooks that might have been given to her over the years. I have a couple cookbooks that I'll show you that are very old cookbooks, but they don't look as well used, and so the theory is that my grandfather, who would go to estate sales and look for treasures, might have found them and brought them back for my grandmother, and she kept them because she liked them. They were special to her, but they weren't the ones that she used all the time. One of those would be this one here. It's the Better Homes and Garden new cookbook, new at the time. Well, new for 1973. So while this is an older cookbook, it's old, but it wasn't well used. So I think this is just one that she had on her shelf, possibly one of those estate sale cookbooks. Now she has a couple of brand type cookbooks, like the Philadelphia Cream Cheese cookbook. And I think there's a couple things in here that she made, because there was a bookmark in here, but she didn't write which one it was that she made, so I'm not sure how much she really used this one. Another brand type cookbook was the New Joys of Jello, which is actually kind of funny because, believe it or not, in the food trend world, Jello molds are actually kind of making a comeback. Isn't that interesting? Then she had a couple other assorted cookbooks here, such as the Barbecue American Style cookbook. This looks like a little bit of an older one. Published by Wallace & Black in Chicago. This was printed in 1971. And she had a little note here in the front taped in there on how to keep your grill clean and take care of it. There's a little one here that's kind of in rough shape. Oh, this is interesting. I guess this is along the lines of a brand type one, but for the O'Keefe and Merritt stoves, because there's like wood burning stoves and heaters and such in here. Check this out. an advertisement for a modern gas stove. So this is the O'Keefe and Merritt cookbook. Another one she had here was just recipes from Great American Inns. Here's another one. It's turned open. Oh, here's the cover. The cover is torn and tucked on the inside. This is the 100 prize-winning recipes adapted for your use by Anne Pillsbury, first edition. Okay, so it was a Pillsbury cookbook of some sort. Let's see. Food editor's hometown favorites. She has one here, The One Pot Dinner by Hannah G. Scheel, little cookbook. Mrs. Beaton's Family Cookery. Now this is another one that we think may have come from an estate sale because it does not look like it was used at all. It's still in pristine condition. It's actually a British cookbook. The price on the inside is in pounds. Published in 1972. So then, in her cookbook stash, there were little things like brochures. I'm guessing she probably got these at the grocery store. A little thing on tossed salads. There's one here. This is Hellmann's mayonnaise recipes. This is just a typed booklet. Well, it was typed on a typewriter, but then printed out. A little booklet of recipes. She's got a Chinese food chicken stir fry here from the Whitewater, Palmyra, Wisconsin newspaper. Better baking and proper frying from Crisco. The Home for the Holidays from Borden Dairy Company. From Simple to Special, Uncle Ben's makes the meal. Let's see, A Guide to Creative Gel Cookery from the Knox Gelatin Company. Then this here was a little set of cookbooks that she had that looked like she used them quite a bit. There's notes, there's writing inside here, there's bookmarks. This one here, she has old-fashioned sugar cookies. Good. There's one for cakes. There's one for candy. This one's got quite a few bookmarks and such in here too. And one for casseroles. You can see there. Let's see. Do you need to go outside, Shotzi? Come on, go outside. All right, and then as I mentioned, she had some brand types of cookbooks. A couple of those were food brands like the like the Knox Gelatin or the Philadelphia Cream Cheese. These were for appliances, such as a Hot Point refrigerator cookbook. There's no year inside this one, but I mean, judging from the artwork, I'm guessing 50s or 60s. There's one here for something called a KM Chefster. I don't know, I think it's some sort of pot system, maybe. There's a, let's see, Rival Cookware cookbook. Here's another refrigerator one. This is a Frigidaire cookbook, and it was printed in 1938. A Monarch Electric Twin Efficiency Range cookbook. It's from Beaver Dam, Wisconsin, but there's no year in here, so would just have to kind of guess, I suppose, or look it up maybe. Now, my grandma doll was the first one that I knew of who owned a microwave, and she had this giant beast of a microwave that had turn dials, and you would turn the dial to how many minutes you wanted it to cook. And you know, she had that thing for years and years, and she's got a couple of microwave cookbooks here. And this one, she's got notes inside and handwritten recipes. This one is for a salmon recipe with some sort of piquant, P-I-Q-U-A-N-T sauce that goes on there. Now this one here is for a Miromatic pressure pan and canner. And I can tell that this is one she used quite a bit because there are notes and handwritten things and all sorts of little tidbits in here. Written on her notepad from Columbus High School 50th year class reunion, 1945. This is another one that really smells like my grandma's house. Now, the reason this one is so well used is because my grandma doll did a lot of canning. She did canning and preserving and all of that, and so she has a couple of other cookbooks like that, such as this one right here. This one was made by the Care Glass Company, and there's all sorts of notes. This is a well-used one, again, as well as this one here. This is the Complete Guide to Home Canning, Preserving, and Freezing from the United States Department of Agriculture. And let's see if I can find a year on this one. As you can see, this one has got all sorts of notes and things inside it, bookmarks. This one was printed in 1973. And just a quick note about old cookbooks. Now, general cooking, things like that is great, wonderful. Try all the recipes you want. But when it comes to canning, over the years, the tomatoes that we grow, the plants that we raise, they've changed. Things like acidity levels are different. And so while it's fine to try recipes from cookbooks, it may not be safe to use old canning recipes. And I know that sounds awful, but because our plants have changed, it may not be safe. So when it comes to canning and preserves, that's the one thing that it's best to look for a modern, updated cookbook to work from. Now, you've probably seen that several of these cookbooks come from or were printed in places in Wisconsin. That's because that's where my family is originally from. That's where I grew up. And just to emphasize that point, I have right here a whole stack of little cookbooks. And these little cookbooks all came from the same place. Now, my grandfather was in the Navy way back many, many years ago, long before I think even my parents came around. But he later worked for A&W Root Beer, which I didn't even know about until my aunt and uncle came for a visit. That explains why my grandfather used to take me to get A&W Root Beer floats all the time. But then later, for years and years, he worked for the Wisconsin Power and Light Company. And I know one, but I think actually both of my uncles worked for the Power and Light as well over the years. But what I thought was really neat when I got this box of cookbooks was that the Power and Light Company had a home economics division and put out all of these little cookbooks. There's some early ones, like this Santa Claus one here is from 1955. I don't know if there's a year. Oh yeah, 1954 for this one here. Here's a little newsletter from 1966. And then later they actually had some nicely printed cookbooks like the Holiday Homemaker Bountiful, Wisconsin, 1968. Or this one, Recipes from Round the World, Holiday Homemaker, 1967. Or the Christmas Cookie Book, which, little bit of trivia, did you know that that's how cookie was originally spelled? And cookie, I-E-S, was plural? So then I have two more of her cookbooks. I have this one here, the Betty Crocker's Picture Cookbook. This is from 1950. And like some of the other ones, this one is still in really good condition. And I don't see any sorts of notes or anything like that from my grandmother in here. And so I don't know that this is one that she used consistently because there's no signs of it. However, then there's this one. And you can see just by looking at it, my grandma used this cookbook a lot. This one is filled with clippings and notes. She's got recipe cards taped to pages in here. I mean, it is just, it has recipes spilling out of it. And this is the one that she used the most. Alright, so that brings me to the last cookbook that I wanted to share with you today. And as I mentioned, it had something to do with Christmas. Well, back in October, when my aunt and uncle came for their visit on the way through and they brought those things, it just so happened it was the exact same week, even to the day that they were arriving, as my parents. Now every October my parents come for a visit and stay for a couple of weeks. Hopefully one of these days it'll be come and stay and just move to Alabama. But when they all came for the visit, my mom saw all of the cookbooks of my grandma dolls that I received, and that reminded her of something that she had been wanting to do for a long time and decided that she was going to do it this year. Well, this is what I opened on Christmas morning. My mom sat down and she made a cookbook of all her favorite recipes. Now some of these are recipes I grew up with, but some of them are recipes I've never had because they became my mom's favorites after I left home nearly 3 decades ago. And so there's some in here I have not tried yet. But I was absolutely floored when I got this. And I loved that she had it divided up into sections. She has meals, side dishes, and desserts. And in the very front, the first page, there's a letter. Now, it's addressed to Connie. Yes. My name is Constance. That is my given name. It's what my birth certificate says. It's what my driver's license says, all that stuff. It's what I go by. But growing up, I was never called Constance. I was always called Connie. Even though as an adult, I actually prefer Constance. I introduce myself as Constance. That's what I go by. My parents always called me Connie. My family always called me Connie. And I was never called Constance, not even when I was in trouble, which was quite a bit. But even though I prefer to go by Constance, my family still calls me Connie, and you can't retrain your family. So, the letter inside says, Connie, growing up, mealtime was always a time to put aside whatever we were doing and gather around the table, be it with just family, special friends, or extended family holiday dinners. I hope you enjoy some of my favorite recipes. Love, Mom. So, I do love cookbooks, but I have to say, there are some cookbooks that are a little more special than others. So that is it. I hope you enjoyed my little show and tell of cookbooks today from my grandmother and from my mom. I'd love to hear if any of you have some of those cookbooks that have been passed down or maybe you've had for years and years. So do share in the comments down below. So that's it. Thanks for watching, you guys. My name is Constance. This is Cosmopolitan Cornbread. And until next time, love and blessings.